The deciding factor was the smell of cigarette smoke. I quit smoking at the age of 11. I managed to smoke 10 packs of cigarettes from my mom and didn't feel very well. My brother laughed at me, saying I was doing it all wrong. Later that day, I talked to my dear uncle, a sailor and smoker. If you smoke, Tash, you'll never have money. I'd rather never start. He always called me Tash. I think it was a nickname he got from his time in the Navy. I loved my uncle, and a brief conversation with him made me wonder why I should smoke. The reason was obvious. I wanted to be like the older boys, like my brother. I wanted them to accept me for being myself. I soon realized that they wouldn't really be impressed because I was too young. Moreover, I realized that I didn't even like the people I was trying to impress. So that's it. No more cigarettes. My determination wavered a bit when I started chasing girls. I wanted to impress them with how macho I was, and walking the streets with a cigarette in my mouth seemed so cool. I hesitated until the moment the coolest girl in school, Rebecca Davis, let me kiss her. Rebecca was a smoker and very cool. She was dating boys my brother's age and let me kiss her. I was very happy until I tasted it. Wow, if smokers taste like this, then I want no part of it. I left Rebecca, who seemed very offended, and continued living as before, not being cool and not smoking. I was always considered a bit antisocial since I was bullied on the playground. I tried not to show emotions. Hit them hard and hit them where it hurts, my uncle used to say, but above all, never let anyone see that you've been hurt. That's exactly what they want, and if they don't get it from you, they'll look for someone else. It worked against the bullies, but it left a side effect. I was left with the inability to show emotions. Years passed, and I found a nice girl who didn't smoke. Her name was Barbara, and we became friends immediately. 18 months later, I proposed to her, and she accepted. That was 23 years ago. A lot of water has flowed under the bridge. We have 2 adult children, Henry, who just graduated from college, and Yua, whose first year of studies is about to end. With Barb, I could be myself. I could let my guard down a bit. When my brother died of lung cancer at the age of 42, it affected me more than I expected. For several weeks after his death, when I was alone, I would suddenly find myself crying. Barb would always find me and hug me until I stopped crying. Not a day went by without me telling her I loved her. Her friends would ask her, "What's it like being married to someone as unfeeling as me?" She would always respond the same way, "You don't know him. You see a logical and cool guy. I see a warm-hearted person who's willing to do anything for his family. He gets angry like any man. He just doesn't yell like some. Frank is quiet and seems even calmer if you don't know him. You'd never guess he's angry." We've become empty nesters, and I love it. Even after all this time, my heart skips a beat when I look at her. I've always been proud to be with her, but when she started taking more care of her appearance, I got even more excited. That's why I didn't notice it right away. I thought I just desired her more, but the smell in our room that Thursday night made me wonder. I realized that it wasn't that she was flirting more often, but that Barb was pushing me away more often. Barb has never had a special sense of smell. While mine has always been sharp, she didn't notice anything. But I smelled everything. I liked some smells, like the scent of Barb when I lay beside her in bed. I hated other smells, especially the smell of cigarette smoke. I hated the way it seeped into clothes and hair and lingered there. Just spending an afternoon in the company of a smoker, and for several days, I could smell the odor on my clothes. That's why the smell in our own room worried me. I asked Barb about it, but she didn't feel anything. She said it was just in my head. Maybe I would have believed her if I hadn't smelled that odor again. The next Tuesday, I called Barb into the room and asked her about it again, but she once again denied any smell. On Thursday, the room smelled like air freshener. This raised my suspicions. I went to the window and smelled the curtains. It was cigarette smoke again. This was getting serious. Someone was smoking in our room, and Barb was trying to hide it. There was only one conclusion. It took me 2 weeks to piece it together. So, 2 weeks later, on Tuesday night, there was a confrontation. We both sat down to dinner, and Barb had just taken a delicious bite of chicken when I asked her, "Who is it, Barb?" A sudden gasp made her choke on the chicken violently. She recovered and I brought her a glass of water. "Who is this?" she asked, trying to play it cool. "The man you let smoke in our room." "Who is it?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." "What are you accusing me of?" "It's quite simple, Barb. I accuse you of inviting a man into our room and allowing him to smoke." "I know it's true. I can smell it." "You're crazy, so calm and peaceful on the surface, and suddenly you go crazy. You should check your nose. There's no man smoking here." I stopped eating and got up, staring at her. I pointed at my plate deliberately. "It's fantastic chicken, really." I walked down the hallway to our room, picked up a small round object, and returned to the table. I went to the corner of the living room I used as my office and came back with a laptop. I sat down and started eating again. "Truly excellent, Barb, you should try a bit more. What you've eaten isn't even enough for a fly. I've lost my appetite." "Why did you bring all this?" After chewing another bite of chicken, I wiped my mouth with a napkin and picked up the round object. "This, my dear, is a Wii webcam. See the small antenna on the back? I left it in our room. Today, I accessed it with my laptop. This, as you know, is my laptop. And I suppose you know it's compatible with Wii. It can connect to the camera wirelessly. A program was launched on it today that includes recording from the camera in case of motion. I wonder what it recorded this afternoon. Maybe a man smoking in our room, maybe even sitting on our bed. Maybe my dear wife is lying next to him. Let's find out." Barb reached out and closed her laptop. "No, I don't want to see it. I don't want to, it's all true. I said it here." "You feel happy, don't you?" "Happy? Do you think I should be happy to know that my wife entertained another man in our room and lay down while he smoked in our bed? No, I'm not happy. Now I'm going to ask you again. Who is he?" I can't tell you." "Will you hurt him? And if you do, you'll go to jail." "I can't bear it." "I love you, Barb. I promise I won't harm him." "So, who is he?" "You promise for real, you promise you won't hurt him?" "Barb, I gave you my word. I won't touch anyone." "I've broken a promise before." She paused for a moment and thought. "No, you haven't." "All right, fine. Now I'll repeat, who is he?" She had her head down and was looking at her feet. "His name is Richard. He's a college student." "I see, and you, as the head of the student service, were just doing your job attending to students. It's inappropriate and beneath your dignity, Barb. Well, now all the cards are on the table. What are you going to do? Do you want a divorce to marry him?" "No, I don't want that. I want you not to leave me, Frank, please, please don't leave me." "And then what? Are you going to give it up?" "I'm not sure I can. I'd like to say yes, but I won't make promises I can't keep. We can't just let things run their course. I know it's just a pastime, and I know they'll get tired of it. He's only 20, soon he'll want young girls, and it'll all be over. What if I don't agree? Then I'll try to let it go, Frank, really. I'll try, but the desire is so strong. When he's with me, I feel so alive. I'm not sure I can do it, Frank. I don't make you feel alive, it's different with you, Frank. Being with you makes me feel loved. I'm so proud to be with you, but it's not the same. Please, Frank, please tell me you're really going to try. I don't want to lose you. You can try, Frank, please. I don't know, I'll think about it and tell you tomorrow. I got up and started clearing the plates. You're serious, Frank? Are you really serious? Are you going to think about it? I just said it, didn't I? Now I better start moving my things to the guest room. No, Frank, I don't want that, really, I don't. Please, don't move out. I have to, Barb. I know how young people are. They'll be all over the place, and I definitely don't want to pick up anything. I'll let you know tomorrow. I left Barb crying at the table as I spent the rest of the night moving all my things out of the master bedroom. The next night, Barb cooked beef stroganoff, my favorite dish, especially the way Barb cooked it. And again, she barely touched her plate, just moving the food around. When I finished eating, she sat and stared at me until curiosity got the better of her. "So, have you made up your mind?" "Yes, Barb, I have." "Well, don't keep me in suspense. What have you decided? Is it over? Is it going to end here and now?" "From now on, you'll have nothing to do with him. If he shows up at your office, you'll send someone else to deal with him. Is that clear, Barb? It's over, and you'll stay with me, Frank. Everything will be the same as before, maybe, I don't know. This has never happened to me before, but yes, maybe I'll get over it in time. Thank you, Frank. I'll really try, I will." "You'll do more than try, Barb. If you want us to stay together, you can do it. God knows I love you more than anything in the world, but I won't allow you to humiliate me. You'll return to our bedroom." "Not yet. If I end up in the same bed with you, I won't be able to help but touch you." I was determined to wait for the full 3-month incubation period, but after just 1 month, I wasn't sure I could continue in the same spirit. I loved her as if there were no tomorrow. I desired her all the time. I'm not a religious person, but I prayed that she would stay away from him. Then, my nose played a trick on me again. She was standing at the sink, draining the water from the vegetables. She was wearing jeans that must have cost a pretty penny and a thin white t-shirt. In that moment, I lost control of myself. I approached her from behind, put my hands under her arms. She let go of the pot, raised her hands to cover mine, and pressed tightly against me. That sounds like my husband," she said. She leaned back into me. When she did, my nose got caught in her hair. There it was, that smell, cigarette smoke, still the same cheap brand, if I'm not mistaken. I pulled away. She felt a little disheartened when I moved away from her. What happened? I don't have to do this." "What do you mean?" "You shouldn't have to, you're my husband. If you don't have to do it, then who should?" "I'm sorry, I lost control for a minute." "Well, I've been trying to make you lose control for the past month. Do you want me to lose control? Do you want my husband back? Is that really what you want?" She looked into my eyes, searching for something that would tell her what was going on. "Yes, that's what I want. I've been telling you for the past month." "Are you sure? Are you sure you want me and not your young romantic?" "No, of course not. She did what you said. I don't see it anymore. She was good, but not good enough. When she lies, she always takes off her wedding ring, and I've seen her do it." There was also a tremor in her voice. "I need to think, I'll be out for a while. It can't wait until after dinner, I'm almost ready to serve it. Just put it on a plate and cover it, I'll heat it up when I get back." I went to the lake and sat there, watching the windsurfers enjoy the late afternoon sun. I stayed there until sunset and then returned home. Barb greeted me at the door, took my hand, and rested her head on my shoulder. "Have you thought about it?" I nodded. "I wish you'd occasionally tell me what's on your mind." "No, Barb, I don't think I want to know." I ate alone while Barb watched what was happening. After dinner, I went to bed, leaving Barb watching TV. The next day, I sat outside the lawyer's office and waited for them to return from lunch. The lawyer's office was just across the street from our local college. I sat in my van, watching the students come and go when I noticed a group of 6 students walking in my direction, more precisely, 5 students and Barbara. They were all laughing and joking as they crossed the road and entered the corner pub. I must admit I didn't recognize her right away. She looked like just one of them. I stayed in the van and watched the pub door, unaware that the lawyers and their secretaries were returning to work. The sky was cloudy, and it started drizzling lightly. I must have been there for about 45 minutes. When I saw her coming out, she was alone and decided to run back to work to avoid getting wet. I crossed the street and entered the pub, watching them all gathered around a table by the window. I ordered a pint of good old and sat at a table near them. I sat and listened to the conversation. "Are you sure, Richie? Do you want something with her? I told you, you'll go for anything. And what are you going to do with her? I mean, she's a bit older. She can't keep me more than well. Look, Rich, you can give her to me when you're done." "Well, then, Take her. Are you going to let her go? Maybe it depends on whether I can't get into Stephanie's pants. I'll give you 20 pounds for her. You can't even spend the night with 20 pounds and a quit smoking aid. Hey, here's an idea. I can rent her. They all laughed. When the girls returned, one of them asked, "What are we laughing about?" "Richie is thinking about renting his wife," Jessai replied. "Don't be so cruel," the other girl said. "I think Babs is beautiful. I wish my mom was like her." I felt anger and deep sadness. How could they be so disrespectful to her? I wanted to sink my teeth into his throat, but a promise to Barb stopped me. "I won't touch him," I said. How could I be so stupid? Throughout the conversation, Richie watched the rain outside. Now I noticed he reached into his pocket and pulled out cigarettes. When he took out a lighter, Jones turned to him. "You can't smoke in here, mate. It's against the law." "Well, I'm not going outside, it's raining. I need a cigarette. And if people don't like it, they can leave." I took my beer and moved to the bar. Despite all my efforts, I had moisture in my eyes. I wiped one away when the pub owner approached. "Are you okay, mate?" "What?" "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. It's just cigarette smoke always makes my eyes itch." The owner looked around the bar. Richie quickly extinguished his cigarette and showed it to the owner. All right, don't panic, mate." "Don't worry, Richie, that's fine," Jones said. "I didn't tell you to put it out, I told you to get out. Now you have 10 seconds before I release the dogs." He started counting down from 10. "All right, we're leaving. I never liked this pub anyway." "In that case, you won't want to come back here, which is good because you're all banned from doing so. Now get out of my pub." As they left, Richie gave the pub owner the finger, and one of the girls said, "Classy." "It's your fault, Richie. Where are we going now?" They reached the door, looked at the rain, and ran in the direction of the college. "I'm sorry, sir, can I refill your beer?" "Not right now, thank you. It's me who should apologize. I didn't want you to lose customers that way. I can do without customers like that. They come here with an older woman. I think this kid is probably sleeping with her. In any case, they're all living off her, and when she leaves, they make sure their drinks last until the end of the day. It's a pity. She seems nice, doesn't she? Well, I'll say this, I wouldn't climb on her to get to you, if you catch my drift." "So, why do you feel sorry for her?" "Well, I don't have qualifications or anything like that, but you see life in this job, in my opinion. She's desperately trying to recapture her youth. She seems nice and is married. So some poor guy will cry, drowning his longing in beer over this, but she comes and sits with these guys, laughing and flirting like she's one of them. You probably heard them talking about her. When she leaves them, she's just fresh meat. It'll all end in tears, and she'll be the only one suffering. It's not that I don't believe in you, but why are you so sure? Like I said, this is my job, you see it all, and I've seen it before. If she's lucky, when this young girl is done with her, it'll be a wake-up call, and she'll try to make things right with her husband. Most likely, she'll get carried away by the feeling of being young again and seek out another teenager. Trust me, it's like the same cigarettes a teenager is compelled to smoke. It's really pathetic." He sounded like an experienced person. He leaned forward so that his mouth was near my ear. "Why do you think there's no wife here?" When he pulled away, I saw sadness in his eyes. He seemed like a good guy, and it hurt him to talk about it. He looked down at my glass. "Now, sir, would you like another?" "No, thanks. My lunch hour is over. I better get back to work. Thanks for the conversation. The owner of the place certainly made me reflect. I'll be able to live with this situation. She's caught in her web, she's already lied to me. So maybe he is. How's your friend these days?" He hesitated for a moment before responding. "I'm not sure, Frank. I haven't talked to him in, probably, about 4 weeks. She did well if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, maybe I would have believed her. So, you have 8 more weeks, and then maybe we can get back to normal. I moved her off my lap and stood up. I went to my room and lay on the bed, thinking. I realized she would never be honest with me. She needs me, she needs my stability, like a rebellious child needs stable parents. And then I realized I couldn't be that stable, I needed a break. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the move, found a place to live, took a day off, and arranged for a company van. I realized that for her secret meetings, Barb was using the room that used to be ours. I decided to leave on Thursday. I picked up the van and parked it in the garage. The morning went unnoticed, and I only managed to pack my things and make preparations. The coffee maker was in the kitchen, ready a little after 2 p.m. Barbara's car pulled up to the house. I watched them approach the front door. She said she was 20, but she looked more like 16. I opened the front door, and Barbara's mouth dropped wide open. I looked at Richard, the young boy. By the way he approached the door, I could tell he was scared. Barbara had to almost drag him through the door. "What are you doing here, Frank?" I could ask you the same question. I thought it was over, at least he had the decency to blush. At the same time, "I'm sorry, Frank, I really tried, but I just couldn't help myself." In the end, I had to talk to him. And then, can you guess? "I'm sorry, Frank, I really am. But we can get through this, I know we can. Go back to work, we can talk about this tonight." I want to talk to him. Do you really think it's wise? Well, I mean, it'll just confuse you, Barb. If a man is going to come into my house, smoke in my room, and sleep with my wife, the least he can do is sit down and talk to me. Does that mean what I think it means? Laugh at me, you don't care. No one said I wouldn't oppose it, but you know I don't want to see you unhappy. So you'll have to endure it. I just wanted to meet him. Laugh at me, promise not to harm him. I've already told you I won't touch him. She approached him, took his hand, and led him towards me. "Frank, this is Richard." "Richard, this is Frank." "Hello, come on. Sit down, have a cup of coffee." "My name is Richard, sir, and I'm pleased to meet you." He extended his hand for me to shake. "Well, I'm sorry, but I can't shake your hand. I promised Barb I wouldn't harm you, and I always keep my promises." I saw him rummaging in his pocket, taking out a pack of cigarettes, picking one and putting it in his mouth, then taking out a lighter and about to light it. "Don't be foolish, Richard. These things will kill you. And if you light one in front of me, I might have to do the job for them. It's customary to ask for permission before smoking in a man's house, and I don't want to end up smelling like an ashtray." "I'm sorry, sir. I thought it was okay. I mean, Barb said you didn't mind." Well, Barb was mistaken. What happens in this room between you two depends on her, but forcing me to passively breathe your poisonous smoke is not part of the deal, is that clear? "Yes, sir." Completely with trembling hands, he put away the cigarette. "As I understand it, you like cigarettes after sex. I don't understand why you smoke those things. You do know about the risks." "Oh, I do, sir, but they say if I quit smoking for 10 years, the risk will go down to 0. I think if I quit smoking at 30, by the time I'm your age, I'll be clean. Assuming you live that long. Now, drink your coffee." "And what's going to happen now? Will you be able to keep her as well as you used to? Are you planning to marry her, right?" I thought he was going to pour coffee all over me. "About me." So surprised by what I offered, seeing his situation, Barbie intervened. "You know perfectly well we haven't even discussed that. I'm your wife, and I always will be." "I understand. So, he's just a pastime, right, Barb?" "Stop it, Frank. Either you go back to work or we're going to talk about this tonight." I turned to the young man sitting at the table. "Well, I see Barb is starting to worry." Barb began to fidget, shifting from one foot to the other and stretching her arms. It reminded me of the moments when my daughter was waiting for her first date. Maybe she's afraid of losing you. Or maybe she's worried about losing her place in your little group. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of recognition in her eyes, as if she had just confirmed that we had met before, but she couldn't remember where. Anyway, it seems it would be better for me to go back to work and leave you two alone. I must say, sir, you're handling this very well. I don't think I could do the same. It's called love, son. I've always sworn to make Barb happy for the rest of her life, and that's exactly what I intend to do. Barb approached and put her arms around my neck. I really love you, you know. I didn't say anything. Barb started pulling at the young man's arm. He began to get up. We're done here, sir. Of course, I said. Go and have fun. He stopped when Barb dragged him away. Sir, may I smoke a cigarette if Barb doesn't mind? Go ahead. The master bedroom was separated from the kitchen by a wall as thick as a concrete block. I could hear them laughing as they undressed each other. I walked around the house, gathered the last few things, took them to the van, and placed them with the others. Then I returned to the house. I poured coffee over the gas stove flame and left. An hour later, all my belongings were in the new apartment, and I went grocery shopping. When Tonight on Points West, the host said this, it caught my attention. I watched the national news and waited for the regional reports. The regional headlines were read, and then I saw this, a street very similar to the one I used to live on. As the camera moved down the street, I saw two houses very much like my neighbors and between them a pile of debris where my little house had stood. Thank God for insurance, I thought. A reporter stepped in front of the camera and began telling her story. Today, around 3 in the afternoon, the entire Kings Merce area was shaken by a powerful explosion that shattered windows in homes throughout the district. The homeowners, Mr. and Mrs. Velos, are believed to have been in bed at the time. Both were pronounced dead at the scene. A fire protection officer entered the frame, and the reporter seized the opportunity to interview him. So, Officer Reynolds, do we know what caused such a large explosion? Is it related to terrorism? We found no signs of explosives. Everything indicates it was an explosive gas buildup. I'm afraid people don't give it the respect it deserves to leave the gas valve open for a while, and all you need is an ignition source, something as simple as turning on a light or lighting a cigarette, I thought. They can't determine how the tenants died. We'll have to wait for an autopsy to find that out, but it seems to have been due to the explosion. The reporter concluded her report on camera, and I turned off the TV. I took out my laptop and turned it on. Barb's face stared at me, and for the first time in many years, I caressed her face on the screen. I'm sorry, Barb. I couldn't let him do this to you. They say an addict has to hit rock bottom. I couldn't bear to see this happen to you. I'm sorry, Barb. I love you, and I always will. Please forgive me. I stayed there for a little over 2 hours. The computer had already gone into sleep mode. I turned it on again, opened the browser, and found the phone number for the television channel's newsroom. Then I dialed the number. It took some time to talk to lower-level people before reaching decision-makers. Hello, I said. You just reported from what's left of my house. Yes, the Exeter RTH. My name is Frank Velos, and you just told the world that I'm dead, but I have to tell you that I'm very much alive. I paused. Yes, and I don't smoke. Story 2. I met my wife, a 33-year-old female, when we were working in the same office 8 years ago. I was new in town, having just moved to a brand new city for my job, and she was a receptionist at the time. She gave me a tour of the facilities, and we hit it off. It took a few weeks for me to work up the courage to ask her out, but she said yes, and we had been together ever since. We got married a few years later, and everything felt like a dream. We were happy, doing well in our lives, and so in love. Before marriage, we had a conversation about family, and we both wanted children, but we wanted to wait until it was the right time. We saw starting a family in our 20s as giving up our youth, so we made the most of it. We traveled, went skydiving, and enjoyed ourselves without having to worry about anyone else. Over the years during our marriage, I started to realize that I wanted to settle down and start a family. However, it was clear that my wife still wanted to have the jet-setting lifestyle that we had before. We actually ended up getting into a lot of arguments about how we wanted different things in our lives. In one of those arguments, I told her that if she wasn't going to have children, I would have to leave her. I know it was a crappy ultimatum, but I had been very clear that I wanted children. She told me about some of the fears she had and how she wanted to be a mom but wasn't sure when. I guess that gave me enough hope to stick around. About a year had passed, and approaching the subject was a delicate situation for me, so I tried to avoid it. She was still going out on the weekends with her girlfriends and going to bars and clubs while I was home recuperating from the work week. I started to notice that she was staying out later and going out more frequently with her friends. Before, she would go out on Friday and Saturday nights, but she had started going out on weeknights as well. When I asked her about it, she told me that she and her friends found a fun happy hour place and had been going there. One night, I was at home watching a nature documentary while my wife was supposedly at a happy hour with some of her friends. One of those friends happened to be our next-door neighbor, who we were pretty close with. She and her husband would invite us over all the time, and we would do the same with them. Someone rang my doorbell, so I got up and answered it. Lo and behold, it was the woman next door that I was under the impression was out with my wife. Apparently, her car wouldn't start, so she needed me to give it a jump since her husband hadn't come home yet. I agreed and grabbed my keys to walk over to her house with her. I asked her why she wasn't at the happy hour with my wife, and she told me that my wife said it was canceled. A lot of red flags were flying for me at that point. Our neighbors were probably some of our closest friends, and I didn't understand why my wife would lie to her and tell her the happy hour was canceled. As we were talking more, she mentioned that she had really been looking forward to it and was upset that it was canceled because her husband had been working late a lot more right away. I was kind of suspicious about that. Maybe it was my own paranoia, or maybe I was putting some pieces together that I didn't even know were connected. But I was wondering if there might have been something going on with my wife and my neighbor. When she got home, I asked her about it outright. She told me that I was being crazy for assuming that she would be cheating on me with our neighbor of all people. Then she explained why she told our neighbor the happy hour was canceled. Apparently, she had rubbed someone in her group of friends the wrong way, and they were uncomfortable with her being there. I believed what she said at the time, but in hindsight, it didn't make any sense. Our neighbor was the sweetest woman, and I couldn't understand how she would rub someone the wrong way like that. With all our issues, our sex life had pretty much gone out the window. We had a lot of built-up resentment toward each other, and we didn't really talk about it in a healthy way. We didn't want to be with each other. One night, I got home from work, and my wife was home and very eager to sleep with me. I was surprised, but I didn't think much of it. I was just happy it was happening. About a week later, she was waiting for me when I got home from work in the living room, holding a pregnancy test in her hand. It was positive. At the time, I was completely over the moon. I was finally going to have a kid. Never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that it wasn't mine. She wasn't going to clubs or happy hours because of the pregnancy, but she was still out quite often. I felt like we should have been together through most of the pregnancy, but it still felt kind of like she was avoiding me. Something that occurs to me now, but I didn't think much of at the time, is that she never wanted me to go with her to the ultrasound appointments. She would always tell me that they weren't anything important, but I wanted to see the little baby on the monitor. I was finally able to convince her to let me go to one. While we were there, the doctor showed us our baby on the monitor, and I was so moved I almost cried. Out of curiosity, I asked her if they had an estimated conception date. My wife quickly stepped in and played it off like they would have no way of knowing, but the doctor said that they could give a rough estimate usually within a week of the actual date. She gave me the estimated time range, and later on, when I was thinking about it, I realized that it was during the period of time my wife and I hadn't been together in months. She and I had sex together one time, and a week later, she told me she was pregnant. I did a little bit of research online to figure out if a week was enough time to get a positive test, and from what I gathered, it was pretty rare. It was rare enough for a woman to even notice she was pregnant a week after conception. Something wasn't adding up, and I needed answers before the baby came. I've never been one to go through my wife's things. That was a boundary neither of us wanted to cross with each other. But in this case, when I thought she was lying to me about being the father of the child I so desperately wanted, I was able to justify doing it. I logged into her laptop while she was out and found countless messages through her social media pages between her and her neighbor. All of my suspicions about the two of them had been correct. They had been sleeping together for several months, and it was clear through the messages that the baby was his. He didn't want anything to do with it, and he was worried that it would ruin his life if anything came out about the affair. They both agreed that they would pretend the baby was mine. I honestly can't put into words how heartbreaking that was to confirm. Having a child was my #1 priority at the time, and I was so happy that it was finally happening, and all of that was taken from me. I wasn't going to let them get away with what they were trying to do. Neither of them got to ruin my life and pretend like nothing happened. A few weeks passed, and I was pulling away from my wife. I was in the process of getting a divorce attorney and filing the papers so I could surprise her with them. We were throwing a shower so people could buy us gifts and welcome the baby a few months before they came. All of our friends and family came over to our house for the event. It was the perfect time to call them both out for the affair. Before the presents were opened and the cake was cut, I stood up next to my wife and told the room that I wanted to say something. Everybody looked at me as if they were expecting me to give some heartfelt message about how much I loved my wife and couldn't wait to welcome our baby into this world together. Instead, I congratulated her and the father on their baby. I could sense that there was some confusion in the room, so I clarified. I let everybody know, including my wife, that I knew the baby wasn't mine. Everyone was shocked and disgusted with her. It takes a special kind of person to pretend like a baby is someone else's. When I was finished, I handed her divorce papers and told her that I would be leaving the house and would have nothing to do with her or her baby. My neighbor's wife was furious, and she dragged him outside to tell him off. As it turned out, he was given a position at her father's company and was up for quite the promotion because he planned on retiring. It was a family-owned company, and his father-in-law wanted to make sure it stayed in the family, so he was going to inherit all of it. When they got divorced, that didn't happen. I was able to get a divorce from my wife, and I'm better off without her. Now, I'm actually with someone else who seems to want the same things in life as I do. We're still in the beginning stages, so I don't know if this is a forever thing, but I have a good feeling about her. My now ex-wife and our neighbor tried to work things out for the sake of the baby. I guess they only liked each other when they were sneaking around. Neither of them is in relationships. My ex ended up moving back home with her mom because she couldn't afford the rent in her neighborhood by herself. OP, my heart goes out to you for what you went through. It was truly cruel for your ex to convince you that you were having a child when you wanted one so badly. She just didn't want to raise the baby alone, and that's clear. I know finding out must have been difficult, but it's best that you found out when you did. Otherwise, everything would have been much more difficult for you. I'm happy to hear that you found another person who wants the same things as you. It seems like your ex lied about a lot of stuff before you were married and switched it up after the fact. I hope what you have with this new woman works out, and you can have the happy family you've always wanted. Story 3. I, a 25-year-old male, recently found out that my girlfriend, also 25, has been cheating on me with a college professor. I'm honestly still shocked and hurt by the news. She completely broke my trust, and I don't know how I'm supposed to move on. She and I were high school sweethearts. I've known her my entire life. We even used to have playdates together as children. When we got into high school, we started dating in our sophomore year, and we had been together ever since. Everybody thought that we were going to be together forever. We were even voted as the best couple every year during high school. She got into an Ivy League college in her state, but my grades have never been close to hers. While she was in college, I took a job at a real estate firm, planning on getting my license when I knew the industry a little bit better. We would always visit each other on the weekends because we weren't too far away. But I had some concerns. While she was in college, I never thought that she was cheating on me, but I felt insecure about the possibility of it. Honestly, both of us came from nothing, and I was worried she would realize she could do better with her life and leave me. I thought that when she got into this fancy Ivy League school, some rich lacrosse player was going to sweep her off her feet, and she would forget all about me. She would reassure me whenever she could tell that I was feeling bad, so I stopped worrying. When she graduated with her undergraduate degree, the school offered her a faculty position that allowed her to pursue her graduate degree at no cost. It was too good of an opportunity to pass up, even though it meant that we would be apart longer. Her job was to assist one of the professors in her department with his research. He was a prominent researcher in their field, and he had a team of students working under him, doing all of the actual work that he was taking credit for. Because of her new job, we couldn't even see each other on the weekends. Every now and then, I would come up and surprise her, but she was always so stressed and tired from her work that we never had any fun. However, when I did get the chance to talk to her, all she would talk about was her professor. She idolized him like he was the lead singer of some rock band. At first, I thought it was just professional admiration, but when I saw a picture of both of them in one of the school's newsletters, I started to raise my eyebrows. It was a harmless article highlighting the research that the chemistry department had been doing. Inside the article, there were different pictures of the students doing the research, as well as some candid shots of everybody while they were working. I happened to notice that in one of the pictures, his hand was resting on my girlfriend's lower back. For some people, that's a harmless gesture, but seeing her much older male professor doing that to her brought up a lot of red flags for me. Shortly after seeing the image, I gave her a call and asked her about it straight up. She laughed at me and told me that I had nothing to worry about and that I was just in my own head and feeling insecure like I always was. She and I rarely fought, but the way she phrased her statements made me pretty angry, and we got into a huge argument about it. After 2 days of not talking, I caved in and called her and apologized, and it seemed like everything was going to be good from there. Our anniversary was coming up, and we had originally planned for her to take the entire weekend off so we could spend it together. I was halfway to her apartment when she called me and told me she wasn't able to step away from the lab. I pulled over on the side of the road and talked to her about it, telling her how disappointed I was that she wasn't putting her foot down about it since this meant so much to us. She promised me that she would make it up to me the following weekend and told me just to turn around and go home. I was closer to her apartment than I was to my house, so I just carried on moving forward. I figured that if she was stressed out and tired, I could at least order some takeout for her and spend a few hours with her before leaving. When I got to her apartment, I unlocked the door with the spare key that I had, and right away, I realized that she was home. She had told me on the phone that she would be at the lab for most of the night, so that was a surprise. I could smell food, and I could hear giggling coming from her bedroom. I walked further in and saw that there had been a meal recently cooked. 2 plates were on the table, and a half-empty bottle of wine accompanied them. My heart completely sank into my stomach. Just as I had suspected, there was definitely something going on. I didn't know who it was, but she clearly had somebody here for a romantic night, and they were in bed with her. I cautiously approached her door and opened it to find her in bed with her professor on top of her. They didn't notice me right away, but when I spoke up and asked what was going on, he jumped off of her, and she quickly ran up to me and tried to calm me down. It was almost comical how hard the professor was trying to hide his face from me. Clearly, he didn't want me to tell anyone about what I SAW. I stormed out of her apartment, dropping my spare key on the ground before I left. I never wanted to go back there again. It was a lot for me to process. For the first few days after it happened, I was practically dead to the world. I had planned on marrying my girlfriend, and before I even had a chance to propose, she threw 8 years of a relationship away. We could have had a love story to tell our grandchildren about, but she ruined it. After I got myself together, I realized that I needed to move on by getting a little revenge of my own. Obviously, the professor did not want me to see who he was because he was afraid of losing his job. I knew that once the headlines were out about a notable professor taking advantage of his college students, he would never find another job in the industry again. I called the HR department of the university and told them about what I saw. They told me they would be launching an investigation. I knew it would be my word against his, and I unfortunately didn't get any evidence. A week passed, and nothing happened. I assumed they were sweeping it under the rug, so I called a local newspaper, and they were very interested in the scandal. It didn't take long for me to finally see the news that he had been fired. I hadn't spoken to my ex since the night I found her in bed with her professor, but her parents were furious with me about outing the relationship. Apparently, since the professor she was hired to work for no longer worked at the university, she didn't have a job. That meant that they would either have to shell out tens of thousands of dollars for her graduate degree, or she would no longer be enrolled. She ended up having to drop out because they couldn't afford to take out any more loans for her. She is out of my life completely, but I still don't know what I'm supposed to do moving forward. She was the first and only woman I've been with, and I am a little afraid to get back out there. OP, my condolences for what you went through. If you trusted your gut and knew that something was wrong, and you were right, she took advantage of the conversations you had expressing your concerns and eased your mind to avoid any more doubt from you. You did the right thing by contacting the newspaper about the story. It sounds like the university saw the professor as a big draw, and they weren't going to do anything about him. He definitely won't have any luck finding a new job. It's good that you have cut all ties with your ex, but I hope you won't let this experience stop you from finding happiness with the right person.